There's one irresistible sign that tells you she wants you, and most men never see it. They stand right there talking to her, the signal flashing like a neon light, and it still slips right past them. Not because she's hiding it, but because no one ever taught them what to look for. Maybe you've been there yourself, at a friend's backyard barbecue, a work conference, or waiting for your order at the coffee shop. She lingers a little longer in the conversation. She stands closer than she needs to. There's a spark, but you hesitate. Hours later, you're replaying it in your head, wondering if you missed your moment. The truth is, women rarely just come out and say, "I'm into you." Instead, they speak a different language, subtle, physical, non-verbal, tiny movements, brief touches, a change in tone, clues that mean everything if you know how to read them. Today, we're going to uncover that one sign that cuts through the guesswork. When you spot it, you'll know she's open to you. And once you can see that, the rest of the signs, 10 in total, will start jumping out at you everywhere. By the end of this video, you won't just be hoping you're reading her right. You'll know, and that confidence changes everything. Let's get into it. Number 1. She moves her hair away from her neck and exposes it fully. Fellas, this is the crown jewel of subtle attraction signals, and it's one most men completely overlook. When a woman deliberately sweeps her hair to the side, pulling it away from her neck, she's not just fixing her style. She's revealing one of the most vulnerable, intimate parts of her body. The neck is packed with nerve endings, it's sensitive, and throughout human history it's been linked to trust, openness, and even seduction. Now, I'm not saying every single woman who moves her hair is secretly in love with you. Sometimes it's practical, it's hot, her hair's in the way, or she's tying it up to eat. But here's the difference. When it's attraction, it's paired with other cues. She might be holding your gaze a second longer, her voice might soften, she might tilt her head slightly, almost as if she's inviting your attention there. Let me give you a real-world picture. Meet Mark, 52, divorced for 2 years, starting to date again. He's at a small jazz lounge with friends when Claire, 47, walks in. She's introduced through a mutual friend and sits across the table. Conversation flows. At one point, Mark is telling a story that gets everyone laughing, and that's when he notices it. Claire, mid-laughter, sweeps her hair over her left shoulder, fully exposing the curve of her neck, then rests her hand lightly just below her ear. She keeps listening, but her eyes are locked on him. Mark's Stoic discipline tells him not to jump to conclusions or get carried away. He doesn't lunge at the moment. Instead, he stays calm, keeps talking, and simply leans in slightly, closing the distance without breaking eye contact. That tiny, measured response tells her, "I see you, and I'm confident enough not to rush." Here's why this moment matters. In evolutionary psychology, exposing the neck is a non-verbal way of signaling comfort and lowering defenses. Think about it in nature. Animals protect their necks instinctively. For a woman to move her hair and leave that area open in your presence, especially in a social setting, means she's at ease and, quite possibly, interested. But as Marcus Aurelius might remind us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. The sign itself is not the invitation to act impulsively. It's information. It's an opening for you to lead the interaction with composure. So how do you respond if you spot it? First, don't break the moment with a clumsy comment like, "Oh, you moved your hair." That kills the natural flow. Instead, maintain whatever connection is already happening. Keep the conversation going, lower your voice slightly, or hold her gaze a beat longer. You're reinforcing the comfort she's expressing without making it awkward. Now, a quick caution. Context is everything. If you're in a group and she's clearly talking to someone else, don't misinterpret. If she does it but is leaning away from you, arms crossed, that's probably not interest. Attraction signs work like puzzle pieces. One by itself might mean nothing, but when they stack up, the picture gets clear. Back to Mark and Claire. Later that evening, As the night winds down, she does it again, this time mid-conversation with him alone, tucking her hair behind her ear and leaning forward. By then, Mark's noticed several other cues from our list. Light touches, genuine laughter, that subtle lean in when he speaks. When all those pieces fit, he knows it's time to suggest meeting again. He does it with confidence, not desperation, and she says yes without hesitation. That's the power of recognizing this sign. It's not about pouncing. It's about understanding the language she's speaking and answering in a way that keeps the attraction growing. Now, drop a comment below and claim it for yourself, right? I read the signs. And keep watching, because what comes next will make you realize just how much is happening beneath the surface, even when the room feels calm. Number 2. She blushes or gets flustered when you compliment her. There's a difference between a polite "thank you" and that unmistakable rush of color across her cheeks. Blushing isn't something you can fake well. It's a physiological reaction triggered by the nervous system that pushes more blood to the surface of the skin. When it happens in response to your compliment, you're seeing her body betray what her words might never admit. She feels something. Now, here's where most men get it wrong. They either overreact, calling it out instantly, which can make her self-conscious, or they completely miss it, focusing only on what she says instead of what her body just revealed. The truth is, in that moment, she's experiencing a subtle loss of composure. You've pierced her normal social armor, and that is valuable information. The Stoics had a lot to say about reading people, even if they didn't use modern psychology terms. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." In this context, listening doesn't just mean to words. It means paying attention to all the ways someone communicates. A blush is the skin speaking on her behalf. Why does this matter? Because attraction often hides behind restraint. Especially in public settings, many women won't openly flirt if it risks embarrassment or unwanted attention. But a sudden flush when you give a genuine compliment is one of those rare moments the guard drops. Even if she's trying to keep things neutral, her physiology has already cast its vote. Here's how to spot it without staring awkwardly. Look for the quick color change, not just on the cheeks, but along the neck or ears. Notice if her eyes widen slightly or if she glances down right after you speak. Sometimes she'll touch her face or hair, as if to distract from the reaction. That's your cue that the compliment landed deeper than surface level. Now, let's talk about delivery. The best compliments in these situations are specific and sincere. Generic lines like, "You look nice," won't create the same response as, "That color really makes your eyes stand out," or "You have a way of making this whole room feel lighter." The more personal without crossing into creepiness, the more likely you'll bypass her autopilot response and spark that genuine blush. But here's the key. Once it happens, don't press. Don't say, "Oh, you're blushing," or draw attention to it. That's the equivalent of stepping on the very flower you just made bloom. Instead, keep your energy steady. Continue the conversation as if nothing unusual happened. That confidence, that ability to hold the moment without smothering it, tells her you're not desperate for a reaction, you're just naturally creating one. And remember, a blush is powerful, but it's still just one piece of the puzzle. The Stoic approach is to observe without attachment. You're collecting signals, not chasing them. If you see this sign along with others from our list, the message becomes louder and clearer. If it's just this one, enjoy the moment, but stay grounded. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." In practice, that means your compliment should be real, your intent genuine. You're not fishing for a reaction, you're offering an observation that reflects what you truly notice and appreciate. The blush is simply her unfiltered acknowledgement that it reached her. So, the next time you give a compliment and notice that slight reddening of her skin, the softening of her gaze, or the tiny stumble in her words, take note. She's telling you something important without ever saying it out loud. And if you can train yourself to read that language, you'll be tuned in to moments most men never see. Drop a comment and claim it, right? I read her truth. Keep watching, because in just a moment, you'll see how another signal can reveal just as much without her even looking at you. Number 3. She fidgets with her clothes or adjusts them. Guys, here's something that flies under most men's radar. A woman might not come right out and tell you she's interested, but her hands might do the talking for her. When she's in your presence and starts adjusting her clothes, smoothing her skirt, fixing her shirt, tugging lightly at her sleeves, it's often more than just a comfort thing. In many cases, it's her way of making herself look better in your eyes. Now, don't confuse this with the kind of restless fidgeting people do when they're bored or impatient. The difference is in the timing and the context. If you walk into a room and she subtly straightens her jacket while looking at you, or she's already in conversation with you and adjusts her collar while holding your gaze, that's not random, that's intention. Let me paint you a picture. Robert, 56, recently widowed, has started dipping his toes back into the dating world. He's at a community wine tasting event on a Saturday evening. Across the room, Evelyn, 49, is chatting with a couple of friends. Robert is introduced, and they start talking about the different blends being served. As they laugh over a mutual dislike for overly sweet reds, he notices something. She glances down briefly, then smooths the front of her blouse with both hands. Her posture straightens, she tucks a stray hair behind her ear, and then her eyes come right back to his. That little sequence, that's her signaling she cares about how she's presenting herself in that exact moment with him. She's not prepping for a speech. She's not standing in front of a mirror. She's reacting to his presence. From an evolutionary and psychological standpoint, this makes sense. People unconsciously groom themselves when they're around someone they find attractive. It's part instinct, part social signaling. For women, adjusting clothing can draw subtle attention to certain features without crossing any lines, smoothing fabric, repositioning jewelry, or fixing the fall of a scarf. But here's where your awareness matters. You're not supposed to call it out. You don't stop mid-sentence and say, "Hey, I saw you fixing your shirt." That kills the natural rhythm. Instead, you clock the sign, store it in your mental file, and keep the conversation flowing. Robert didn't react outwardly in that moment. But later in the evening, when Evelyn adjusted her necklace while he was telling a story, he paired that with other signs, her leaning slightly in, her laughing freely, her eyes following him as he moved. Each piece alone might mean nothing, but together they painted a clear picture. Here's the Stoic angle. You're not chasing every flicker of movement. You're observing calmly, without letting excitement cloud your judgment. You're looking for patterns, and when you see them, you act with intention, not impulse. The tricky part, not all clothing adjustments are attraction-based. Sometimes she's genuinely uncomfortable, fixing a strap or adjusting for temperature. That's why you have to read the rest of her body language. If her arms are crossed, her body turned away, or her tone is cold, the adjustment probably isn't about you. On the flip side, when the adjustment comes with open posture, a softer voice, and consistent eye contact, it's worth noting. In those moments, she's essentially telling you, "I care how I look right now, because you're here." For men like Robert, and maybe for you, learning to spot these cues can be the difference between walking away thinking, "Nice chat," and realizing you were being given a green light. Now, it's your turn. Drop a comment below and claim it. I notice everything. And stay with me, because in a moment, we'll cover a sign that works in complete silence, and yet it can speak louder than anything she says. Number 4. She bites or licks her lips more than usual. Alright, let's be real, this one can throw you off if you don't understand it. Lip biting and licking can be perfectly innocent. People do it when they're nervous, when their lips are dry, or simply out of habit. but when it happens repeatedly in your presence, especially at certain moments, it's worth paying attention. Why? Because lips are one of the most expressive parts of the body when it comes to attraction. They're tied to both communication and intimacy. When a woman bites her lip or runs her tongue along it while looking at you, she's often signaling heightened awareness of you and sometimes subconscious anticipation. The trick is reading the context. If she's licking her lips while looking at her phone or staring off into space, that's not your signal. But if it's mid-conversation with you, paired with eye contact, maybe a slight smile, and a pause before she speaks again, that's when your awareness should light up. There's a reason this works on such a primal level. From a psychological standpoint, it draws your attention directly to her mouth. And biologically, it's a form of self-grooming. She's making sure her lips look smooth, hydrated, and appealing. That's not just random maintenance. In the right setting, it's a deliberate cue. Now, here's where the Stoic mindset gives you an edge. Epictetus said, "We are disturbed not by the things that happen, but by our opinion of the things that happen." In other words, don't let your imagination run wild just because she bit her lip once. You're not here to build a fantasy. You're here to observe reality and act on patterns, not isolated moments. Think of this sign as part of a silent conversation. She might not be ready or willing to express interest verbally. Instead, she's letting her body send the message in a way that feels safe to her. Your role is to pick up the signal without pouncing or making her self-conscious. So how do you handle it when you notice it? Simple. You hold your ground. Keep your voice steady, maybe slow your pace a touch, and maintain eye contact just long enough to acknowledge the moment without calling it out. By doing this, you're creating space for her to either keep sending the signal or pull back. If it's genuine attraction, she'll keep giving you more without you needing to fish for it. One subtlety to watch for is timing. Often, lip biting or licking will come right after you've said something that lands, maybe a compliment, maybe a teasing remark, maybe a story that made her laugh. That slight delay between your words and her reaction can be telling. It's like her subconscious is responding before she's even had a chance to think about it. Of course, this isn't a green light by itself. The Stoic way is to avoid assumptions until you've got multiple pieces of the puzzle. If you've noticed her leaning in, holding eye contact, and now she's drawing attention to her lips, that's when the picture starts coming into focus. Remember, you're not here to chase moments. You're here to read the room and respond with composure. A man who understands these signals and stays calm becomes far more attractive than the guy who jumps on the first hint of interest. So next time you're in a conversation and she bites her lip or licks it slowly while looking at you, don't overplay it, just note it. Stay present and let the moment breathe. You'll be surprised how much more she reveals when she feels you're not going to ruin the flow by overreacting. Drop a comment and own it, right? I see the signs. And stick around, because soon we'll look at a signal that doesn't involve her lips at all, yet it can shift the entire energy between you in seconds. Number 5. She brushes her hand lightly against your chest or shoulder. For a lot of men, this is the moment they second-guess themselves. Was that an accident? Did she just bump into me? But here's the truth. When a woman lightly brushes her hand against your chest or shoulder in a way that feels deliberate, it's rarely an accident. Touch is one of the clearest ways humans signal connection and attraction. In fact, research in social psychology shows that even brief, light touches can create a measurable increase in feelings of warmth and trust between two people. The key is recognizing when the touch is intentional and what it's paired with. Let's put this into a real-world scene. James, 54, works in finance. He's at a Saturday afternoon charity golf event, catching up with friends between rounds. During the social mixer, he's introduced to Melissa, 50, who's volunteering at the registration table. They talk about the event, the weather, and how they both got roped into attending. At one point, James makes a light-hearted comment about his terrible putting skills. Melissa laughs, and as she does, she reaches out, brushing her hand across his shoulder, not a shove, not a pat, but a slow, deliberate contact before pulling away. That kind of touch, paired with a smile and direct eye contact, is a signal worth noting. It's her way of creating a bridge between you. She's testing the space, seeing if you're receptive, and sending a quiet message. I'm comfortable enough to close this gap. Now, could it still be platonic? Sure, some people are naturally more tactile, but context matters. If this is the first time she's touched you in the interaction, if it's paired with open body language and other signs from our list like leaning in, laughing easily, or holding your gaze, then you're probably not imagining it. From an evolutionary perspective, touch communicates trust and reduces perceived distance between two people. In a romantic context, a hand on the chest or shoulder is significant because those areas are socially safe yet still intimate. It's not a handshake. It's not a tap on the elbow in passing. It's closer to your core, and that proximity carries weight. James didn't overreact. He didn't freeze up or make a joke about it. Instead, he let the moment pass naturally, kept the conversation light, and later noticed she touched his arm again while saying goodbye. By then, he'd clocked enough signals to know she was genuinely interested. Here's the thing, when you notice this kind of touch, your best move is to receive it calmly. You don't need to comment on it or instantly reciprocate. In fact, sometimes the most attractive response is simply holding your ground, smiling, and continuing the interaction, as if you're perfectly comfortable with her being in your space. The Stoic approach to this: treat it as a piece of information, not a trigger for impulsive action. You're not measuring your worth by whether she touches you. You're simply aware that she's chosen to bridge that gap physically. As Marcus Aurelius might say, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. In this case, tolerant means giving her the freedom to express interest without jumping to conclusions, and strict means maintaining your composure. Touch is powerful. It can change the emotional tone of an interaction instantly, and when it's her initiating, even in a subtle way, it's often a green light provided the other signs are there too. So the next time you feel that light brush against your chest or shoulder, pause internally, recognize it for what it might be. And remember, your response isn't about seizing the moment like a movie hero, it's about showing you're the kind of man who doesn't flinch when connection comes to him. Drop a comment and claim it right. I welcome connection. And stay tuned, because next up is a sign that works without a single touch, yet it can pull your attention to her instantly. Number 6. She lowers her voice and speaks more slowly when you're alone. When the two of you are surrounded by other people, her tone might be casual, light, maybe even quick-paced to match the energy of the group. But then you notice a shift. The moment it's just the two of you, maybe you've stepped to the side during an event, maybe you're walking together down the street, her voice drops. The pace slows. It's no longer the public version of her speaking. This is different. Lowering her voice isn't just about volume, it's about intimacy. In social psychology, a softer tone and slower cadence create a feeling of closeness, like the words are meant only for you. It's a subtle way of closing the emotional distance, even before physical proximity changes. When this happens, pay attention to the other cues that might come with it. Is she leaning in slightly, holding your gaze longer, choosing words more deliberately? These signs together can point to a comfort level and attraction she doesn't offer in the same way to others. There's also a deeper layer here. When someone speaks more slowly, they're often choosing to savor the moment. Instead of rushing through the conversation, she's making the interaction feel personal, unhurried, like it's worth lingering in. That choice of pacing is telling. From a Stoic perspective, this is where you lean into awareness without attachment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Observe always that everything is the result of change." The change in her voice is exactly that, a shift in the environment, the dynamic, the unspoken message. You're not here to force it, just to recognize it for what it is. It's also worth noting that voice changes can be both conscious and subconscious. Sometimes she's deliberately creating a private tone to test your response. Other times, it's instinctive. Her body and mind are signaling comfort and interest without her actively deciding to do it. Either way, it's a sign you're no longer just another face in the crowd. Here's the pitfall for most men. They either miss it entirely, too focused on what they want to say next, or they react in a way that disrupts the flow, suddenly making a joke about the secretive tone or breaking eye contact because it feels too intimate. The better move is to meet her where she is. Keep your own voice steady, maybe even mirror her pace and tone. That subtle matching reinforces the connection without you having to say, "I feel it too." The beauty of this sign is that it can happen anywhere, in a loud bar where she leans in and slows down so only you can hear, or in a quiet park where the stillness makes the change even more noticeable. In both cases, the shift tells you she's comfortable enough to create a little world within the larger space. But, as with all signs, you need more than just one moment to make a call. If she slows her voice when you're alone but avoids eye contact or crosses her arms, it might just be habit or shyness. Look for consistency. Does it happen more than once? Does it pair with open body language or other attraction cues? When you do catch this happening, think of it as a door opening slightly. The Stoic approach is to step through with patience, not to shove it wide open. You let the interaction breathe. You give her space to either deepen that tone and pace or shift back if she's not ready. That balance, being attuned without being over-eager, is what sets you apart. So, next time you're talking and you notice her voice dropping, her words stretching just a little longer, remember, she's giving you a piece of her undivided attention. Handle it with calm, and it might be the start of something that goes well beyond that conversation. Drop a comment and own it, right? "I hear her," and keep watching, because what's coming next is a sign so subtle it can happen in a crowd, and yet you'll feel like the only one she's thinking about. Number 7. She gently bites or plays with the corner of her lip. This one is sneaky. It's not the obvious full lip bite you might see in a movie scene. It's subtle, just a slight catch of her teeth on the corner of her lip, or maybe she toys with that edge using her tongue. And if it happens while she's looking at you, it's almost never by accident. Let's bring it into a real-world moment. David, 58, recently retired, is attending an art gallery opening with friends. He ends up talking with Rachel, 51, about a painting they both admire. As she's listening to him describe what he likes about the colors, she glances down for half a second, then gently bites the corner of her lower lip. It's quick, almost like a reflex, but then she smiles and her eyes meet his again. That's the kind of sign most men miss. They're too focused on what they're going to say next to notice. But here's why it matters. The corner lip bite is often tied to a moment of heightened emotional or physical interest. It's an instinctive way of releasing a little nervous energy, while also drawing attention to her mouth, one of the most intimate focal points in human attraction. From a psychological angle, it's self-grooming and self-expression rolled into one. It's her body saying, "I'm aware of you," without her having to put it into words. And the fact that it's subtle makes it even more powerful, because it's less about performance and more about raw, unconscious reaction. For David, that tiny movement told him something important. She wasn't just politely listening, she was engaged on a different level. But he didn't point it out. He didn't smirk or break the flow. He just kept the conversation going, holding her gaze a little longer, letting the moment breathe. That kind of composure keeps you in the driver's seat without ever looking like you're chasing the signal. Of course, context is everything. If she's biting her lip while concentrating on a menu, that's not about you. The timing has to be right, ideally. It happens in direct response to something you've said, or while there's already a sense of chemistry in the air. The key here is to recognize it and store it as part of the bigger picture. If you've already noticed other attraction signs, leaning in, playful touches, her voice softening, then this subtle move becomes another brick in the wall she's building toward connection. So, when you see it, don't react outwardly. Just take note, keep your tone steady, keep the conversation warm, and let her keep sending the signals. The more comfortable she feels, the more those unconscious behaviors will slip through. Drop a comment and claim it. Write, "I catch the details." And don't go anywhere, because the next sign isn't about her mouth or her words, but it can completely shift the way you see her interest in you. Number 8. She touches her collarbone or necklace while looking at you. This is one of those gestures that's easy to overlook, but it can be loaded with meaning when you know what to watch for. The collarbone area is delicate, visually striking, and whether she realizes it or not, touching it can draw your attention there. When a woman's hand moves to her collarbone or plays with a necklace while she's looking at you, it can be a blend of self-grooming, subtle invitation, and a way of channeling nervous energy. Here's why it matters. That part of the body is vulnerable, not in a dangerous way, but in a personal, almost intimate sense. By bringing her hand there in your presence, she's highlighting it. If she's also making steady eye contact or pairing it with a small smile, that's often a deliberate signal of openness and attraction. Sometimes the movement is slow fingers tracing the chain of a necklace, adjusting the pendant, or lightly brushing the skin just below the neck. Other times, it's quick, almost like she's not aware she's doing it. Either way, the key is to connect the gesture with the timing. If it happens right after you've said something personal, teased her in a playful way, or shared a laugh, you may be witnessing a subconscious reaction. From a psychological perspective, this is another form of self-touch that communicates comfort mixed with interest. People often touch areas they want others to notice without explicitly asking for that attention. And in a social setting, this kind of movement is far from random when paired with the right body language. The Stoics would remind us to observe without assumption. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." That's a perfect reminder. Here, seeing her touch her collarbone doesn't mean you leap to conclusions about her feelings. It's one data point. Your role is to notice it, place it alongside other signs, and keep your mind disciplined enough not to let fantasy run ahead of fact. The danger in spotting this sign is reacting in a way that makes her self-conscious. If she realizes you're laser-focused on her hand at her collarbone, she might shut the gesture down instantly. The better move? Maintain normal conversation, but keep the mental note. If the behavior repeats during the interaction, and it aligns with other attraction signals we've discussed, that's when you can be more certain it's intentional. There's also a pacing element here. Often, the slower and more deliberate the touch, the more it leans toward attraction. Quick adjustments could still be practical, fixing a clasp, moving hair away from her necklace, but even those moments can be worth noting if they happen at very specific times in your exchange. When you're in tune with these subtle cues, you stop missing the opportunities most men overlook. You're not chasing signs, you're collecting them patiently until the pattern is undeniable. That's how a Stoic-minded man plays the long game in attraction, measured, observant, and never desperate. Drop a comment and lock it in. Right, "I read the moment." Stay with me, because the next sign is physical, bold, and nearly impossible to mistake, but there's a catch most men never see coming. Number 9. She sits closer to you than necessary, even in a group setting. Space is one of the clearest forms of communication we have. Most people maintain a comfortable distance in social situations, especially in group settings where seats are open and there's no real need to crowd someone. So when she chooses to sit closer to you than necessary, you should take notice, because that's rarely an accident. Let's picture it. Mark, 55, is at a casual Sunday brunch with a few friends from his hiking club. They've grabbed a long table, and seats are open on both sides. When Linda, 52, arrives, she scans the table. There's space on the far end where she could easily sit, but instead, She walks around and slides into the chair right next to Mark, so close their elbows almost touch. She smiles, greets him, and joins the group conversation. Throughout the brunch, Mark notices that Linda doesn't lean away. If anything, she angles slightly toward him when they talk. Even when she's chatting with someone else across the table, she stays in that close proximity. That choice where she sits and how she stays there speaks volumes. From a psychological standpoint, people naturally preserve personal space with acquaintances. Shrinking that distance is a non-verbal way of saying, "I'm comfortable with you," or even, "I want to be in your immediate orbit." In a group, this move is even more telling because it's intentional. She could have chosen anywhere else, but she picked right next to you. Now, this doesn't mean you should assume interest every time someone sits nearby. Sometimes it's practical, maybe the seat was just convenient. But the key is in the details. Did she have other options? Is she leaning in during conversation? Is her body turned slightly toward you rather than away? Those small shifts separate convenience from intention. Mark didn't overanalyze in the moment. He simply noticed the pattern. Linda could have moved when other seats opened, but she stayed put. She laughed easily at his comments, occasionally touched his arm when making a point, and her knees pointed in his direction most of the time. Taken together, those cues formed a clear signal. This is where awareness pays off. Many men miss these signs because they're focused on the group dynamic. But by quietly observing without announcing it or changing your behavior dramatically, you give her space to keep closing that gap on her own. From a Stoic perspective, you remain grounded. You're not leaning forward in excitement or crowding her back. You're calm, present, and respectful of her space, even as she's reducing it herself. That balance makes you stand out, because you're not reacting like someone who's desperate for attention. So, if you find yourself in Mark's position and notice she's sitting closer than necessary, paired with other signs of interest, you've got a strong indicator, but you don't have to do anything right away. Sometimes, the best move is simply to hold your space and let her keep making that choice. Drop a comment and claim it. Right, "I noticed the space," and keep watching, because the final sign is bold enough to remove all doubt, and yet, most men still manage to miss it. Number 10. She places her hand near yours, inviting touch without asking. There's something unmistakably personal about hands. We use them for everything, but when it comes to attraction, the way someone positions their hands says more than most people realize. One of the clearest and yet most understated invitations you'll ever get is when she places her hand near yours, close enough that one small movement would bridge the gap. This isn't about reaching out and grabbing you. It's not the bold arm around the shoulder gesture. It's subtle. Maybe you're sitting side by side at a table and she rests her hand on the surface so close that your fingers are just inches apart. Maybe you're standing together and she lets her hand dangle near yours instead of crossing her arms or tucking it away in a pocket. The power of this gesture is in its quietness. She's creating a space where touch can happen naturally without her having to verbalize anything. It's her way of lowering the barrier physically and emotionally while still letting you take the lead. From a psychological perspective, this is an invitation wrapped in plausible deniability. If you respond, it can feel organic. If you don't, she can easily move her hand without the awkwardness of a rejected overture. That's why so many women use this tactic when they're interested but still feeling things out. Here's what to pay attention to. Proximity and duration. If her hand hovers near yours for just a split second, it could be random. But if it stays there, relaxed, open, maybe even with her fingers lightly drumming against the surface, she's signaling comfort and openness. And if it happens more than once in the same interaction, it's rarely coincidence. The Stoics would approach this with the same calm as every other sign. Epictetus taught, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." Her hand being close to yours, that's in your power to notice and respond. What happens next, whether you close that gap or simply hold, the moment should be a deliberate choice, not a reflex. The beauty of this sign is that it's both minimal and bold. Minimal because it's just a few inches of space. Bold because, in the unspoken language of connection, it's her stepping forward without moving her feet. If you've noticed several of the signs we've covered so far, and then this one appears, it's as close to a direct yes as you're likely to get without words. Whether you take her hand, brush your fingers lightly, or simply meet her eyes in that moment, you're acknowledging what she's put on the table without a single sentence being spoken. That's the full list. 10 clear, unmistakable signs that a woman's interest in you is more than just casual. The more of them you notice in the same interaction, the more confident you can be in reading the situation correctly, without guessing, without overthinking, and without stepping outside your own sense of calm. If you want to keep building that awareness and carry yourself with the steady confidence of a Stoic, this channel is here for you every single day. So, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and don't miss the next video. Thank you for spending your time here today. I appreciate you being part of this conversation, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Until then, stay steady, stay aware, and keep moving forward.